Right, so guys, you know how we've all been labouring under the misapprehension for at least 20 years that the lyrics to Test's theme song are
cupcakes. Yeah.
I mean, you can't convince me otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, I'm about to, because I've looked up the lyrics.
Right.
And get ready for this Chaucerian wit here.
Okay.
Test.
First of all, who is it saying that Jim Johnson wrote the lyrics?
It does not say.
Then I'm just going to presume that Andrew Martin, God bless his soul, wrote the lyrics.
Indeed.
Andrew Test Martin was on a road trip from Dallas to Austin on a Monday Night Raw, and I'm guessing I'm going to go with Prince Albert was driving the car, right? Okay. And he's tapping the dashboard with his pencil, holding his yellow legal pad in his left hand and going, I need some inspiration here. So he looks out the window at the Texas skyline, and what does he come up with, Dave?
He comes up with, Test, this is a test. Test.
Great
test.
start, by the way.
This is a test. Here we go, bring your name, we can hold peace. Here we go, bring your name, on the go. Freaking pull the line and go for the high school sock hop. Give it up, cause you know and I know. Conceit to fall on a parasol. Cause here we go, we can hold peace. Yo, here we go, bring your name on the go. Freaking, here we go. Bring your name on the go. Freaking for a jack off, you can go. Here we go.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Bring
Was
your
there a
name.
bit about sitting on a parasol as well? I just want to...
Yeah, conceit to fall on a parasol.
So, conceit to fall on a parasol sounds like something you'd be charged with in a really weird minor crimes court.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. This goes on for quite a while, so I'm not going to keep going. It's fairly repetitive, except for the part that just says, in brackets, bass solo. And I've never gotten that far in his music.
Is there a bass solo in Test's theme tune?
You know, I think I remember it only because I had...
Mark.
No, because I had... it was like volume 4 of the WWF music, and Test music was on there.
I love you so much right now for remembering that there's a bass solo in Test music.
Tween Mark sitting around going... and then the
Conceit to fall on a parasol.
fucking slap bass starts.
Mark's going around his room like a fucking rabid flea, just slapping along to Test theme tune.
12-year-old me was listening to a combination of that, Chocolate Starfish, Hybrid Theory, and the Marshall Mathers LP. So, you know, I was well versed in all genres of music.
Just people walking past. Yeah, those are all the genres. Definitely.
They are. That's every genre.
Every single one of them.
Yep. I absolutely love it when Wes Borland won Best R&B Act at the MTV Awards 2001.
Let's say though, we are significantly lacking in 2020 for wrestling lyrics in theme songs, because like 1999. No, well, yeah, that goes without saying. But like 1999, you know, you had everything from D'Lo Brown to Mr. Ass, obviously being the infamous.
I don't know why, but when you say like, because Mr. Ass in an English accent doesn't sound right, but Mr. Ass I don't know why, it just sounds almost filthier than Mr. Ass, and I can't explain why.
I'm not going to look it up because I don't want it in my Google search history, but I would be almost certain there has been an Irish wrestler going with the Mr. Arse gimmick. It just feels like a thing that had to have happened at some point. Along with, like, you know, fake Undertaker in the UK and stuff like that, like Mr. Arse.
Oh, like those kind of like early 2000 Butlins carnival shows or whatever with the...
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the shit, man. Whack on a red blazer and go watch Mr. Arse.
You mentioned Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavoured water. I was watching like music videos on YouTube, and I got linked to and I had been watching a couple of needle drop videos and I got recommended somewhere through the algorithm. It was like, oh, this guy must be looking for music reaction videos. So it was this dude, I didn't take down his name, but it's like his whole gimmick on his channel is that he's got 2 teenage children, 1 boy and 1 girl, and he like plays the music from when he was growing up. And the one that came up in my recommended feed was them watching My Way by Limp Bizkit. And like, obviously, because we have the WrestleMania 17 connotation, but I forgot how ungodly silly the music video for My Way is.
Mm-hmm.
Is it they're all like different Hollywood?
They're in a studio set.
Yeah.
There's one of them that are basically like a big band, an equivalent of like the Coco Bongo from The Mask, where they're in like ruffles and tuxedos and stuff.
By the way, that just reminded me of The Mask, and it's a question that I always think of whenever I watch that movie is, why is it super cool to go to like a hot Cuban dance club in The Mask? Like, I'm pretty sure I remember 1994 just about, and I can't honestly say that ever seemed like a cool thing to do in 1994. Like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, my only memory of 1994 is Diego Maradona.
It's
screaming into the void.
It's got to be one of those things where, like, do you know you see the memes going around often? That's like, wow, when I was a child, I sure thought quicksand was going to be a bigger deal that I had to contend with on a daily basis when I grew up. It's just one of those things that, like, it's probably like an in-joke with animators of that generation or something like that. But yeah, the Coco Bongo, that brings me back.
The best 90s film relic by far is the Space Jam website. Have you boys ever seen it?
There's actually a new episode of How Did This Get Made?
On Space Jam.
Episode on Space Jam.
Yes.
And I only just started listening to it there earlier. I must get back to it.
Yeah.
By the way, WrestleMania 17,
podcast.
20 years next year.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But speaking of more current wrestling, something I did this week, lads, was go to OTT. King's Monsters and Bastards was coming out of the KFRC in Tala, which is
Kentucky Fried Rugby Club, like
the Kentucky Fried Recreation Center, as I keep calling it. Yeah, it's a family resource center that's like outside of Tala. Like, the venue crisis has been a bizarre thing. We've gone to all sorts of weird and wonderful places to see the grapples the last while, thanks to it. But enjoyable enough show. I think it was like there was a moment earlier on where it looked like, whoa, this show is tipping perilously close to the void from which it may not return, as poor Mark Haskins came over. Mark Haskins, a man I think all three of us here enjoy.
Absolutely. I feel like when he has a good opponent, he can have an incredible match. But how often is he ever given a good opponent?
Yeah,
I can't remember the last good Mark Haskins match I saw, but not because of him.
Well, I'm about to tell you about the most recent bad Mark Haskins match I saw. It has nothing to do with him. So, right, there had been a couple of cancellations on this show. Most notably, Pac, who I'm assuming was going to be wrestling Mark Haskins, because there's no way is the match I'm about to outline to you something that he should have been paid and flown in for. It was a waste of that poor man. Yeah, I to hit back on what you said as well, Jack, I kind of I enjoy Mark Haskins as well. I think his only real sin has just been that he is everywhere all the time, and kind of like people kind of take him for granted, I think, how good he can be, hence probably putting him against all sorts of shitehawks instead of in prominent positions, because he's kind of a little bit overexposed sometimes, I think, to people.
Just wasted in so many ways.
Yeah, what a workhorse though. And he comes out and he is saying that there's been cancellations and people brought in at the last minute, but he's here to fight, one of the best wrestlers in the world, so give him one of the best wrestlers in the world. And of course, this is for what was about to happen. I get the gag they were trying to do, but really, when everybody like in the room knows that both Zack Sabre Jr. and Will Ospreay are in the UK area that weekend, you maybe don't want to throw out that you want one of the best wrestlers in the world, because you're going to get the crowd hyped up for something that wasn't going to happen. Because he starts doing it and there's kind of a buzz in the crowd, and then all of a sudden Justy comes out and it's just a collective ugh. And the gag is, you want one of the best wrestlers in the world, so I have come out as one of the most average wrestlers in the world to get myself booked. He's doing a Twitter thing about how he's not booked for shows, so he said, I booked my fucking self. And then Haskins is like, yeah, okay, no. And then Captain Sexy from Club Tropicana comes out. Or it was the other way around. It was Captain Sexy and then Justy. And yeah, proceeded to have an exceptionally poor three-way. And everyone was like, until the bell rang, everyone was holding out hope. It's like, oh yeah, no, it's like the good wrestler is going to come out now, and him and Haskins are going to throw out the two goofs and then have a match themselves, and that's not what happened. It was a 3-way, and it was awful. But, you know, thankfully the rest of the show more than made up for it. There was a great Scotty Davis and Callum Black versus Omari and OJMO match, and he's kind of appeared more and more in the UK recently, and I'm sure you've probably seen him live a couple of times, Jack. How good is Omari?
Omari is very good, yeah. He's I just think people don't ever really talk about him. There's like, as it's like a in-ring performer, I think he's class, but is it me or is it just something that, like, he's kind of missing something, like, with his character? I think
he's missing like a killer promo. I think, like,
or like a gimmick or something. Yeah, just punished Venom Omari. Just give him an eye patch.
He's he's got the swagger. He's excellent in the ring. He is young. He is a fucking unit.
Yes.
He has put on, like, since he went away to uni and came back there last year, and like he's put on what seems like double his body weight, but still moves like he's a small dude. And yeah, that match was awesome. Got to see Paddy M and Eddie Kingston, and it's never a bad night when you're getting to see Eddie Kingston just wail on somebody and light their chest up. And then we had...
Is Eddie Kingston the nicest scary man in wrestling? Like, he is...
He's exceptionally terrifying, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but away from the ring and just some of the, like, stories you hear about him, he just sounds like a lovely man.
Yeah, and he's always bigging people up on Twitter, like all his wrestling friends. Have you seen, there's a tweet going around that's got a lot of retweets, and it's Charlie Evans, the wrestler. She has a tweet thread that's just candid photos of Eddie Kingston in the UK.
Oh, brilliant. No,
dude, as good as that sounds, it's better. You need to check that shit out. But what was I going to say? The main event then was Starr and Jeff Cobb, a man once described by you, Jack, as being built like luggage. And I think he may be twice as wide as he was when you said that 2 or 3 years ago to me.
I just don't get how he can be so blocky. He's just freaking huge.
Yeah. And Mark, as a guy who... watches a lot of New Japan, you'll share the frustrations I do with Cobb, and that, like, and I was saying this, I appeared on our friend Alan's Pro Wrest Paradise over on the PW Torch website, and I was saying that there's no wrestler in the world I'm more actively willing to, like, kick on to the next level than him, and he just seems to just fall short of it.
It is kind of amazing, like, for all the faults of Lucha Underground, they actually booked him the best, though.
Yeah.
They also booked him as a monster. The Ring of Honor were kind of on their way, like, when they signed him up, and then everything from the Matt Taven championship match onwards has kind of been like, what are you doing with him here? But I guess they also, like, he's not signed anywhere officially at the moment, so I can understand that Ring of Honor...
He's on a per-show deal with AEW now.
Yeah, so I can understand Ring of Honor being a bit tentative to do anything with him. If you haven't got knocked down, then you don't put a belt on him, and I can fully understand that.
They absolutely did him perfectly on AEW last week, I will say.
Well, kind of, but it was also that the pacing was a bit weird. Like, if you're going to have him... if you're going to do it, I don't know, I feel like you could announce it and then have him just show up next week. Like, I don't think he needs to come out at the end of the show.
I think it was perfect because to me it was a response to the amount of people they've had just randomly show up, like Butcher and Blade and stuff. So Jericho has educated the crowd in the building exactly who he is. They even showed a little clip of him so that you're absolutely sure, so that you guaranteed a reaction in the room when he came out later that night. And it almost kind of buries the lead. It's like, well, they've shown him there, he won't show up tonight, so it's almost more of a surprise that he did show up at the end, for me. That's what I really liked about it. And he just came out, didn't speak, tour the islands, boom. That's all you needed to do. Looked mean into the camera. And if they keep it going for a while, where you have Big Jeffrey throwing lads around, looking mean, and Jericho is talking him up, that is the way to go, I think. Short of making him Matanza again.
But I wonder like how long he'll be there for, because again, if there's the whole he's on a show by show case kind of thing, it's like you can't really do much with them. Is the New Japan issue they had with Ibushi?
Yeah, my guess would be a try before you buy sort of thing.
But that's if they can buy him, because if he wants to do New Japan still.
Yeah, but like Mox can do New Japan, and do you know what I mean? I imagine.
True.
And he's a better friend of the books than Mox was coming in, you know. So like, they seem to, especially like when it comes to the summer and they're going to start needing names coming in, I'm sure they're going to be willing to make some concessions here and there. But the match in question against David Starr was one of the better Jeff Cobb matches I've seen in a long, long time. This was two friends in real life just knocking the shit out of each other, to the point where Jeff Cobb got his nose bloodied quite thoroughly by the end of it. He threw some almighty looking strikes and suplexes and good stuff like that, and the Star stuff continues to be like my favorite long-term story in wrestling. It's fantastic. And at the end he got on the microphone and said at Scrappermania he's going to beat the fuck out of Jon Moxley, and I'm all up for that.
That's going to be a hell of a sight, Jon Moxley in an OTT ring.
I'll tell you what, the pants are going to be gone, my friend.
I can't. Gone. Yeah, I imagine the atmosphere of that is going to be insane.
Yeah, no, absolutely special.
The thing I liked about Parasite, and I can say this without it being any spoilers for Dave, is that we sort of Western movies have very sort of clear 3-act structures. They often cover a lot of the sort of Shakespearean, you know, whether it's a comedy or a tragedy. Like, and I think it's almost like it just absorbs into
Western movies. Feel like they have boxes to tick or fit in.
Yeah, and it's not something that I think a lot of directors go out to do consciously. It's just because most directors are fans of film to start with, and that's how they get into that area.
Or even sometimes that's the structure film school beats into them, basically.
Yeah, essentially for a variety of reasons. Whereas I watched this and I don't. I mean, you could probably construct a 3-act structure, but it didn't feel like it had the flow of a regular movie to me. It just felt a little bit, I mean, oddly janky in places, but that kind of made it what it was. And yeah, there's literally nothing I can say without telling you stuff, so I'm just gonna can it and say that it's a really fucking good movie, and that the fact that it won the Oscar, and the fact that maybe a lot of the choices that kind of people had lined up and thought would be a bit more obvious and didn't actually cut the mustard makes me really happy, because I mean, I
think everybody was going into it saying, well, it's 1917 because it's the most obvious Academy Award winning option. It's a very good film. I don't want to denigrate it anyway, but it is very safe as a best picture.
Here's what I think though: if that had been about American troops in a war that America had been involved in, I think it would have won the Oscar. Because, like, you know, when they gave it,
it would have won 14 of the fucking things.
And don't get me wrong, like, I love Catherine Bigelow. She's an unbelievable director. But The Hurt Locker, when that one, I was just like, oh man, like it's just such an obvious thing.
What's the worst travesty in your mind in our lifetime, in terms of a snub or in terms of a that's what won?
Oh, I mean,
I've got two that come to mind immediately.
Okay, yeah, you go with your ones and I'll tell you mine.
Okay, my two are Mickey Rourke not winning for The Wrestler.
Oh, he was so good, yeah.
Because, like, Sean Penn was good in Milk, but like, he wasn't that good. He wasn't as good as Mickey Rourke was.
Again, like, that was a very LA-centric story, and, like, the vast majority of people that they might not actually be from LA, but a lot of people in the Academy live there, just because if you're in the movie industry, you kind of have to be in the vicinity, right? So I know he was the mayor of Los Angeles, right? Mm-hmm. Or one of the California? San Francisco?
You might have been San Francisco.
I think San Francisco, yeah. So I think that had a lot more resonance, and yeah, Mickey Rourke. And I think to us, because we're sort of sensitive to the world of professional wrestling, that performance probably meant even more to us than it might have done to an Academy voter. But he was that good. And that was a sort of Mickey Rourke renaissance that happened for a few years back there, and he's kind of shuffled off again into not being in movies.
The Rourke-assance. The ultimate one for me is Crash winning Best Picture.
I was going to say Crash. I mean, it was the first thing that came into my head, just because it just isn't. I was fucked off when The Artist won the Best Picture, though, to be honest.
Do you remember what was up against Crash?
No.
Do you want to hear?
Yeah, go for it.
I just googled it. Good Night and Good Luck.
Right.
Capote.
Oh, Capote was very good.
Munich.
Wow. Man, Eric Bana just kicking some serious ass in that movie.
And Brokeback Mountain.
Oh, wow. It beat Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyone stick out in your mind, Mark?
No, I'm not as versed in the history of the Academy Awards and the Oscars, and I don't really have any emotional attachment or this kind of vested interest that a particular actor or actress or film or whatever should win. Bringing it back around to Parasite, I will say that of the two films, I would say that I enjoyed 1917 more, and I think that it's partly just because I really appreciated that film on a technical level, I guess.
And it won the Best Cinematography Oscar, so it kind of got its due there.
Absolutely.
But I might have given Best Director to Sam Mendes. I mean, I absolutely, because it won Parasite won Best writing as well, didn't it? As well as Best Director Picture and Best Foreign Film. Kind of obviously, I guess if you give it the Best Picture, it kind of has to by default win Best Foreign Language Movie. But I still think I give that direction Oscar to Sam Mendes because I feel like he kind of earned it. But that might be a bit controversial.
Partly as well. I mean, from beginning to end, I was enthralled with 1917, where I have issues with the end of Parasite, which unfortunately I can't talk about. But I can't sit here and say that Parasite doesn't deserve to win Best Director and Best Film and everything else, because it is an incredible film and incredibly well acted as well. Some very engrossing performances from pretty much every single person in that film plays the role that they're playing to just perfection. And the twists that happen, it doesn't feel forced. It does come just out of nowhere, and the way that it ramps up the tension, I thought it was incredible, and I definitely want to see it again. And certainly after, I mean, I love with a film like this where I watch it, I get my kind of initial takes. I'll go read some reviews, listen to some reviews, watch some kind of deeper analysis talking about how, I don't know, the geography or the way the building structures are aligned or the lighting and all that kind of stuff that it represents, and then going to see a film like Parasite again, because it definitely, it doesn't just tell the film with the script, it does all these other things as well.
I've heard Bong Joon-ho is lobbying to get this in a black and white cut.
Yes, I'd heard that as well.
And
I would
apparently
that.
People who have watched it by fucking with color saturation and stuff like that watched it in black and white are like, yeah, it's actually much better in black and white. It reminds me of that the Mad Max Fury Road black and white cut is apparently incredible.
I mean, fucking that film in 8mm would be incredible. Right? Give me that film, however, and it'll be incredible.
The other one, if we're going to talk about Academy Award snubs that I wanted to mention before we moved on, was because maybe at the time people go, oh, it's the sentimental choice, and Bob Zemeckis definitely had earned Best Director at that point, but Forrest Gump is not a film that has stood the test of time. Jack, give you another trivia here. Do you know what Forrest Gump beat for Best Picture?
Is it Shawshank?
It beat Quiz Show.
All
right, yeah.
Never seen that movie at all.
4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Well, I mean, great movie, but I'd say that Forrest Gump might be better than 4 Weddings. I enjoyed it more.
The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, that's. I knew it was Shawshank.
Jack. And Pulp Fiction.
Do you know what though? Do you know what? I honestly feel like if you look at that now, I think the voters were like, should we give this to Shawshank or Pulp Fiction? Because, Dave, if you sat me down for like a couple of hours, I could not decide between those two movies. I really couldn't.
You see, I think, right, I think it's one of those stupid fucking Academy things that they're known to do, where they're like, we won't give it to Quentin, he's very young. So they gave him Best Original Screenplay that year.
Yeah.
And they're like, that'll do him. We'll get round to this whole, eventually directors get their due. Like, it took Marty Scorsese like 30 fucking years to get his Best Picture.
Yeah, and he won for The Departed, which is a movie I love, but it's probably, cracks into his top 5 maybe? Yeah. But so to me, I'm still pissed off because of the artist, but Moneyball that year was the one that I would have given that to. I absolutely fucking love that movie. So
Shawshank is like... Shawshank got panned critically, I remember.
How?
Isn't it always fascinating? You have these films that get critically panned, and then just over the years, the cult following that like oversees the kind of mythos of the film just overrides. And because it wasn't like Blade Runner, although Blade Runner obviously the original screen release.
Yeah, the original version of that is bad.
So I can get it with that, but it's always fascinating when that happens.
Well, my favorite movie stories of all time is the original narration for that, the original theatrical cut that Harrison
Ford's narrating over.
He disagreed so much with the idea of narration that he purposely acted as badly as possible doing the narration so that they would take it out, and he was astonished to learn that it made it to the theatrical cut. But yeah, you want to see the final cut is the version of Blade Runner you want to see.
Well, I mean, any of the 35 versions that isn't the original theatrical release.
Yeah, they get gradually better over time.
Yeah. I think some of them kind of... The only thing I don't like about the re-releasing of Blade Runner is that some of them kind of telegraph more that he is a replicant, which I don't like, because up until like Blade Runner 2049 for a few years ago, I liked not knowing. I think it was one of those great sort of movie debates, like, is he a replicant or is he a replicant? Like, the end of Inception, but were they in a dream? Is that spinning top going to stop spinning? And, people like going frame by frame saying, oh, is this a wobble? That and kind of, I like not knowing. I really like not knowing.
Speaking of guaranteed Best Picture nominees, Jack, you saw Sonic the Hedgehog.
Hey, yes, I did. And it was pretty okay. There you go.
Yeah, I've heard the phrase aggressively average being thrown around.
I mean, it just was all right. Sonic was quite cool. He was kind of... His backstory was that he was an alien, and as an alien, he was looked after by an owl called Longclaw. Which I don't... Is that part of the Sonic?
So the alien part? Yes.
I've never heard of Longclaw.
So, this always pops Mark when I bring up the UK Sonic the Comic lore.
Oh god, here we
go. Oh, Dave, are you the only person that read the Sonic comic?
I think I am. I really think I am. But I used to have a massive basket stack of them. I really wish I could lay my hand to some of them now.
So isn't he's from Mobius? Isn't that?
Yeah, which is like a parallel universe kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so he is an alien of a sort.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, and basically, the way that he transports to different worlds. Basically, this owl in space on an alien planet. There are like these weird, like ooga booga kind of fucking dudes. Like, it looked like something out of the Mighty Boosh.
Dudes.
You know the fuckers with the Parkers in the Mighty Boosh. It was like sort of. It was like the bow and arrow.
Look
equivalent.
deep into the Parker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not that deep. But they were chasing Sonic, and this owl was like, "Motherfucker, you gotta get to another planet," and then gave him a bag of rings. And the rings, right, instead of just being something that he arbitrarily collects, they actually transport you between universes.
So that's the space owl shit and the Parker dudes. No, that's not a thing I remember. But there was like these large rings called like Mobius rings, which look like the giant ring you sometimes jump through in Sonic games. And those would be kind of like almost like a Stargate sort of situation.
But yeah, that's exactly what it was. But the weird thing is, it's like, you know when Pokemon anime where Ash takes out a Pokeball and it's real small, and then he goes to throw it and it gets bigger. It gets
bigger, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the same deal.
And
like
he presses
Sonic...
the button.
Sorry?
He presses the button on the Pokeball.
Yeah, but there was no button pressing on this ring. It just magically you throw it in the air and it turns into...
It just embiggened.
Look, Sonic has learned instant transmission. That's what we're getting here.
Yes, a noble spirit embiggened the biggest hedgehog. And anyway, he ended up on Earth, and then he just fucking chilled for like 20 years, and then finally found out that he wanted...
ran out of chili cheese dogs. Is there chili cheese dog references?
All I want to know is how Jim Carrey is Jim Carrey. On a scale of 1 to Jim Carrey, how is Jim Carrey?
I mean, he's probably about a 7 on the Jim Carrey scale, man. And
I'll take
that. There was some big moments. There was some like Forrest Gump moments. To me, the best part.
Excuse me.
I don't say Forrest.
You just throw
Are you
that
saying
out
this film
there
is going to beat
like
Shawshank at the Academy Awards?
You just throw that out there like that's a thing people say.
What the fuck, man? What I meant to say was Ace Ventura, and I said Forrest Gump because Dave got Forrest Gump in my head. Both
Those
came
are
out
very similar movies.
Both came out in '94, and there's where the similarity ends.
I'll tell you what, I know what's going on for our preview this week.
Oh Christ. Anyway, yeah. So he then becomes pals with somebody, mainly because he gets really pissed off when he's playing himself at baseball and makes a massive power outage, and then sets Jim Carrey on him. Genuinely, what happens?
Hey, weren't you Scott Summers?
The part of the the part of the first maybe 20 minutes is so sweaty to get him into the plot. Like, it makes no sense whatsoever. I preferred it if they were just like, yeah, this is a hedgehog and he's best friends with a police officer who lives in a small town, because why?
Yeah, but just like that's just how it is.
Yeah, it's just sweaty as fuck. And like some kid snaps a picture of him on a phone, and then all of a sudden Jim Carrey's like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, and basically the movie is then a bit of a sort of chase pursuit movie where, like, at one point the cop is basically made out to be one of the biggest domestic terrorists in the country on like countrywide news, and it is not alluded to at any point that he is wanted for treason and terrorism against his own nation. He happily walks into petrol stations, bars. No one reports him, no one outs him for his supposed terrorism or anything. Like, he walks into a city, he asks to go like to the top floor of a skyscraper, and the woman doesn't question it, and I'm like, wait, isn't he meant to be like a massive terrorist? I don't know what the
honestly,
fuck's going on.
Considering the amount of effort it sounds like they did to shoehorn Sonic and how they made the plot, it doesn't surprise me that they completely overlooked something as basic as that.
So I have two last questions for you, Jack, on Sonic, and these are the only two questions that I think any movie reviewer should go in.
If is the answer to both of them absolute dog shit?
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Are there any appearances of or allusions to Supersonic?
Yes, kind of, and that's kind of how he gets Robotnik set on him. Sort of.
And then my other question, and for a movie like this, given kind of the height of Sonic's popularity, I think if this came out, Jack, in 1996, and you saw it then at the age you were, would this be your favourite movie?
No. It wouldn't be my favourite movie, but I probably would have liked it more. See, I enjoyed it, and I came out feeling uplifted, but I'm re-going over the plot in my head, and I actually now starting to think retrospectively that it was dumb.
That's piss.
But it wasn't dumb to sit through unless you really think about it. If you just enjoy it as a spectacle.
Yeah. It's the Pacific Rim thing. It's like, switch the brain off, enjoy the fuck out of some dumbass shit.
I have one last question. Do you think if you saw this film in its, should we say, original concept and the original vision of what Sonic looked like, do you think that would have enhanced your enjoyment of the film or possibly made it worse?
I mean, I, for one, didn't actually give a single shit about the way Sonic looked.
But he had human fucking teeth, and it was terrifying.
I was just in it for the bants, man. But
if you were stuck watching that like Clockwork Orange style for 2 hours.
I do have 2 final points to add. Like, number one, when Jim Carrey first appears on the screen as Eggman / Robotnik or whatever you want to, there's a kid
Robotnik
like
is how I want to refer to him.
There's a kid like 2 rows back, and he just turns around to his mum or his dad or whatever, and just went, "He's not fat." And then folded his arms up for like 10 more minutes after that. And that killed me. I turned around and looked. It's just sat there with his arms folded.
I tell you what, we should get him to watch Street Fighter and see Guile be from fucking Belgium.
And
which there was recently a Cinema Swill episode about. Street Fighter.
The final shot of the movie is Jim Carrey as Robotnik he's gone absolutely mad. He's let his mustache grow out properly. He's bored for some reason, and he's stranded on a planet made of giant mushrooms.
Wait till I tell you the not on the air, because I don't think the people need to be subjected to it twice on this program. The origin stories in those comics of Dr. Robotnik. I'll tell you what. It's a fucking doozy, my friend. In
either the games, right, or the fucking comics, is there an allusion to a planet of giant mushrooms?
I wouldn't say there's a planet, but in Sonic 3, the first level is... No, not Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles. It's called Mushroom Hill Zone. So maybe that's it.
Oh yeah, the town he's from is called Green Hills, Montana. Just,
Of course it is.
Sure, okay.
That's cute, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, that's a nice little illusion right there. And then, the rest of it is probably whatever. I've forgotten this was even a game.
So I watched 2 movies in the last couple of weeks. One new, one old. I watched, and I think you might have watched this, Jack. It feels like a thing you probably went to see. Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood.
I didn't watch it in the end, actually. I did want to go see it, but because I knew fuck all about Mr. Rogers, and I know he's like a massive cultural touchstone for a certain boomer generation anyway.
Let me tell you this, right? I went into this with the kind of amount of knowledge that somebody from Ireland or the UK like yourself would have gleaned secondhand through pop culture about Mr. Rogers. So, like, I knew what he was, I knew kind of vaguely what the show was, but really knew nothing much about Fred Rogers, the person. Watch this movie, Jack. After 2 hours, I would fucking die for Mr. Rogers. I tell you that, I would die for this man. Oh,
is there a more perfect person than Hanks to play it? Because someone just said like this is the role that Hanks was kind of meant to play, even if no one cared.
It's just a really heartwarming movie, and I think it's one of those, like, I'm loath to use these kind of buzzy phrases, but it's one of those, this is the kind of movie the world needs now sort of thing. Because it's about this guy that the movie is done through your point of view character is this journalist who's a bit of a kind of like a cipher for a lot of us, I think, where we kind of like the harsh things that are around us in our own lives and an ever growing cynicism in the world has kind of hardened a lot of people and made them kind of numb to niceness and purity in the world. And this guy is like a journalist who has he has a kind of a reputation for being like a real hard-hitting interview, to the extent where his interview subjects often don't care for him very much afterwards. And his lens is kind of an interesting one, because he's sent to do a profile on Mr. Rogers in an upcoming issue of, I think he's an Esquire writer, and it's an upcoming issue about kind of heroes, and he's to interview Mr. Rogers, and his whole thing is like he goes through most of this film just not buying into it. He's like, this is a character, he can't really be this nice or this good of a person and things like that. And he interviews Fred Rogers, and he takes a look on set when he's recording an episode of the show, and there's kind of a bit of magical realism involved as well, where there are kind of dream sequences where he's kind of almost like a character on the show and things like that I think are very cleverly done. And I think it rides that nice line between being a dramatic biopic and being too saccharine. It never quite veers too far into being saccharine, and it's interesting the way they have that Fred Rogers character interact with this journalist and his life and the things that are going on in the background that make him the kind of angry, disenchanted person he is. You say it, Jack, but like this is the perfect role for Tom Hanks. He knocks it out of the park in a way that, like, I know I shit on Forrest Gump earlier on, but it's like he's one of these guys that you can just...
Can I just clarify that? Do you genuinely not like Forrest Gump?
I do not think that movie has aged very well at all.
I can maybe see that, but I do really like Forrest Gump.
At the time, yeah. But, like, it's not one that, like, especially by comparison to the other movies we named that it was up against.
Yeah, fair enough.
Both Pulp Fiction and Shawshank Redemption, if anything, have aged better than they were received at the time, you know?
True. One question about Mr. Rogers. Is he basically Ned Flanders?
Essentially. Except, you know... not to say Ned is sanctimonious, but, you know, like, Ned has the kind of... He comes at it from a religious perspective and trying to save people and stuff like that, where, like, Fred Rogers just has no agenda. He's just a good dude. Like, he's just... It's almost like the journalist, the main character. It's like he almost speaks... He asks questions that you're almost asking in your head if you're not familiar with Fred Rogers, where it's just like, what is this guy? You know, where it would be if you had no knowledge of Fred Rogers at all and you sat down to this movie and you encountered a man like this, because of the way kind of the language of film and the narrative film works, you're like, okay, when's the other shoe dropping? He's going to turn out to be some sort of monster, isn't he? Or something like that. And there are a couple of kind of nods and winks from characters in it. His wife in particular, who's just like, you're profiling Fred Rogers? Don't ruin my childhood. You know? Because there's a certain element of, if he's a monster, people don't want to know, because he's one of the few pure people that there are left.
Yeah, it's a bit like if like all of the TV presenters from people's childhoods a few years ago just getting absolutely
there's a really heartwarming scene in it, one of many. You get to see a lot of Mr. Rogers interacting with, like, sick children or sometimes adults who were like, you know, I couldn't afford school and watching your show taught me how to read kind of stuff. That's really, really heartwarming. And there's something that I draw a comparison to a movie from a couple of years ago there's a scene on a subway train in New York where it's just...
this is in the trailer and they all start singing the theme, right?
But yeah, it reminds me very much of, is it Darkest Hour? There's a really contrived scene on a train in that.
Oh yeah, where Winston Churchill with all of the
and it feels
and
like
people start standing up and going,
"Oh,
you can do it."
It feels like the most contrived thing in the world, but in this movie, it's a kind of similar thing. And yeah, like you said, it's in the trailer where they all just start singing along, and it's just like a heart melting kind of moment because it's people old and young. And, like, this journalist who's, like, been really hard-nosed about, nah, I'm not buying into this shit, is seeing this happen. And, like, the unifying force of this guy who's been with generations of the same families. And he's just been such a constant paternal force for good for all of them. Is really kind of, like, it was just a very refreshing and uplifting kind of movie, I think.
Yeah. The only thing I liked about that scene in Darkest Hour is getting to see the cool old tube trains. So, like, I was like, because I'm a bit of a transport nerd sometimes. I quite liked that, but yeah, it was awful.
You're going to like something I'm going to be talking about later on in the program. In that case, my friend.
Well, let's continue with the show.
The other movie I watched, I'm not going to spend long talking on it. It's one of my absolute favorite movies of all time, and just myself and Emma
Sonic
took
the Hedgehog.
The notion. Took the notion to rewatch it, and that is the Coen Brothers classic "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," which I think is... It's not that it's the redheaded stepchild of their movies, but I think, like, of the kind of top tier Coen Brothers movies, it's the one that gets the least love in the kind of general scheme of things. Because I think a lot of people obviously talk up, like, No Country for Old Men, they talk up Fargo, they talk up Big Lebowski in particular, but, like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is so fucking good. And, like, it, you know, I'll put it out there, I think it's my favourite Clooney performance of all time.
Yeah, I really liked Up in the Air.
Yeah.
The Descendants was really good. Obviously, Batman and Robin. So, no, just kidding. Yeah, he's great in this movie. And you know what? I remember when I first saw this film, and I was like, you know, to me, George Clooney at that point of my life was like the guy from ER who was on Friends and everyone fancied, but wasn't really that much of a serious actor. You know, and I saw this movie and I was like, a homeboy can act. Yeah, he's very good.
He's and like it's one of those something the Coen brothers do, you know, even though I know we've talked before, Jack, about how you're not as big into the Coens as I am, but I think one thing that even people who aren't like devoted Coen brothers maniacs can attest to is that their casting in their movies is beyond compare. It's just like the quality of like actor they get in for a small role, or the quality of character actor they pick up for a major role. Like the trio of George Clooney, John Turturro, and Tim Blake Nelson in this, and the chemistry the three of them have, unbelievable, to the point where you couldn't see anyone else playing any of those roles, I don't think. And even some of the smaller roles in it, the guy who plays Babyface Nelson is incredible. John Goodman in this movie for like 5 minutes as Big Dan Teague, incredible.
Yeah, he do you know what? It's everything that you expect from those sort of spitshine, you know, huckster salesman type characters. John Goodman, he's great in everything he does.
Yeah.
And does he get enough credit for, even if he pops up for like 5 minutes, like, does he get the credit he deserves?
No, he definitely
Do we
doesn't.
think? I just think, you know, like, you watch Argo and stuff, right? And you can see what John Goodman can do. Like, and he doesn't get the opportunity to do it that often.
Yeah. Thankfully, the Coen brothers have been giving him opportunities. Because he's in this, obviously, Big Lebowski, Barton Fink as well. But yeah, he's a fantastic actor. I love him.
Did you see 10 Cloverfield Lane?
No, I haven't. I really mean to, just for his performance, even though I can't abide Cloverfield.
Do you know what though? It really has fuck all to do with Cloverfield.
Yeah.
This movie. It's just a we're trapped in a weirdo's basement movie, and John Goodman is the weirdo, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead is one of the people trapped, and yeah, it's great. Like tension, weird kind of movie that I think took a lot of shit. Mainly because people who like Cloverfield are probably thinking that this has got fuck all to do with Cloverfield. And then people that like didn't like Cloverfield were like, why the fuck would I want to watch this movie, Dave? Because you haven't seen it. But watch it for Goodman.
Yeah, I love me some John Goodman, sir. And this is like, this movie is great. Everything about it is so, like, the soundtrack is incredible. I know everybody talks about Man of Constant Sorrow, which is a banger. But like, it's such an incredible composed soundtrack of like old kind of blues and revival music and stuff like that. It's really, really good. I'm trying to think of who the other small characters, the dude whose name I can never remember, who played Jeffrey Lebowski, the Big Lebowski in the Big Lebowski. That dude as Pass the Biscuits Pappy O'Daniel is incredible, and the way he just constantly browbeats and berates his son and his staff as he's running for re-election is incredible. Where there's a line in it where they're going into the radio station. By the way, another small
Charles Durning, his name?
Could be.
Yeah.
He died there a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
They go into the radio station, which, by the way, is manned by Stephen Root in another great tiny role in that movie. But he has a line, Pappy O'Daniel has a line to his son about like something to the effect of, thank God your mother died giving birth to you, otherwise she would have died of shame looking at you.
I mean, what a line.
It's just absolutely incredible. Like, it's not his greatest line, obviously, in his entire career was, what was it, the bums lost in is that big rant in Big Lebowski, or do my tears surprise you, sir? But yeah, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It came up because there was a tweet thing going around at the weekend about your 4 comfort movies. and that has got to be one of them for me. Have you ever seen Oh Brother Art Thou, Mark?
Yeah, I've seen it once, but it was a fair few years ago now. I enjoyed it. I'm not really I'm not up too well up on the Coen Brothers. I've seen that. The hell else have I seen? I've seen Raising Arizona once, I think.
Yeah, that's okay.
And I've seen No Country for Old Men, but and Big Lebowski obviously as well. So I've seen it once and I enjoyed it, but I'm not. I certainly don't have the passion that you have for it. But I haven't seen the entire kind of back catalogue of the Coen Brothers films.
Genuinely think it's one of the more underrated movies of kind of our lifetime. It is just so consistently funny and good, and I'll tell you this, it's definitely head and shoulders above any other cinematic adaptation of Homer's Odyssey you'll ever see. Which is something that, even though it says it at the start of the movie, I didn't actually cop for a couple of years, because the only copy I had of it was on VHS that cut off the first couple of minutes. So when it was explained to me, my head nearly collapsed in on itself finding out that's what it's technically about. But yeah, it's really, really good. That's one of my absolute favourite movies of all time. Mark, far and away from a cinematic adaptation of Homer's Odyssey, you have been watching some anime.
Yeah, so I'd heard about the show when it came out, but I never watched it at the time. But the kind of the presentation of it did catch me at the time. But my girlfriend a couple of nights ago was like, "Hey, there's this thing on Netflix." We were scrolling through Netflix and it came up, and she's like, "Have you ever seen this?" It's like, "No, I've never watched it, but it looks funny." And she's like, "Yeah, my friend recommended it to me and I watched it, and I think you'd enjoy it." So it's called Aggretsuko, and it is so it's a very kind of surrealist show, but it's also it kind of points and tackles. It's very the commentary on it is about the Japanese work style and how they just don't have this balance of work and their own lives, and it kind of encapsulates that in a way that's quite surprising for an anime that is based off of, I think it's based off of a brand of mascots. So it's very surprising that it takes that tone. But the idea is you've got this anthropomorphic red panda who she's an accountant during the day, and she hates her job, she hates her boss, she has this very mundane life, and the way that she handles stress is that she goes to karaoke, because in Asian culture, karaoke bars is like a frequent pastime of theirs. She goes to karaoke bars and she screams death metal, usually using the lyrics she's kind of freestyling about how bad the day is. You'd think that. And it's just fucking hilarious because she's this mild-mannered, meek little red panda, and then they get whatever guy to do the death metal screaming. It's talking about having a shitty boss and hating their jobs or whatever. And sometimes she'll do that, or sometimes she'll go to the bathroom during lunch, and she'll be screaming in one of the cubicles with the death metal screaming in the background. And it's, very much, if you know anime and you know it covers all the extreme tropes that you'll see in the way that anime is presented, but with this kind of backdrop, with the social commentary that it tackles, and with the complete absurdity of the death metal screaming, it really nails it for me. And it has one issue in that by the end of the first season, there's 2 seasons and I haven't watched the second one yet, by the end of the first season, the main character, she's kind of back at where she started, and I guess that kind of plays into whatever happens in season 2. But yeah, every episode is only about 15 minutes. I think it's 10 episodes long, so you can binge watch in 2 sessions easily. But it's very funny. At no point did I not enjoy the death metal screaming, and there's a bit where she's trying to make peace with her boss, who, the idea that your male boss could be this chauvinistic pig. Well, the boss is literally a pig in the show, and all the characters are different types of animals. And she tries to make peace with him when there's like a work party function, and she starts to get him drunk, and then, you know, it all kind of falls apart. And so he gets up on stage and starts doing this freestyle rap talking about how she'll never go anywhere. And he's really laying into her. And she starts to go away, and then she comes back and she basically screams his face off with just talking about how much of a terrible boss he is. And it's very, very funny. So, yeah, I haven't watched a lot of anime recently, and it's got me all hyped up for the next season of Castlevania, which is next month.
That episode kind of sounds like 8 Mile, but with animals.
I say it kind of, the whole premise kind of sounds like Dilbert, but animals.
I suppose there's a little bit in there. But it's, yeah, I genuinely enjoyed it. And, you know, I can be hit and miss with anime. Like, when anime goes real anime, like fucking Gundam or whatever, I don't care for it.
Unlimited anime!
I don't care for it. But when it kind of tackles something or does something that's a little bit unconventional, I'm usually for it. So, yeah, thumbs up from me.
Watched a couple of bits of TV in the last couple of weeks that I can recommend. One I'm rewatching at the moment. There's not a whole hell of a lot to say. But it is about to run out this week on UK Netflix, so you should maybe get it in while you still can. It's Ken Byrne's Civil War. It kind of came up because myself and Emma here were talking in the house about how, like, they don't really cover American history past the War of Independence in secondary schools here. So she was like, she kind of had some grey areas on things that happened in the Civil War. I was like, fuck it, we'll get Ken Burns in to sort the situation out here. Ken Burns, probably the greatest living American documentarian, certainly in a historical context anyway. It seems very much, Jack, like a couple of his series would be up your street. I'm thinking in particular of Ken Burns' Baseball.
Yes, that would be up my street.
A 10-part series on the entire history of baseball that I don't give a fuck about baseball, and even I found riveting. But yeah, the two I would have to recommend to Ken Burns newbies if you're ever going to check out his stuff. Ken Burns Civil War is I think is fairly universally agreed upon as one of his best. And the other one I would say is his recent one. I think it was 2018. He did a 10-part documentary series on the war in Vietnam. That goes into way greater detail than you would have ever experienced in school, or even in my case at university level, as to what happened in Vietnam. So that's really, really fascinating stuff. And then the other thing, speaking of things I would definitely recommend to Jack Lazell as a fan of documentaries, is McMillions, the new HBO documentary series. Have you seen anything about this, guys?
No, not really.
I know nothing of it.
Okay. So, you know how over here, every year or so, McDonald's does the Monopoly game? Where you peel off the tiles, and if you match 3...
Oh, God, is it the story about the guy who did the con?
Boom, boom.
Oh, yes. I can't wait. Yeah, I do know exactly what this is then. Yes, so, I am very excited to watch it.
So in America, this Monopoly thing, because it's only been the last 5 or 6 years here in Ireland and the UK, I would say. In America, this has been going since, I think, 1982. I think they said, like, annually. And yeah, there's the match, the colours, the locations, and you get one sort of prize, but there's also instant winner things. So this documentary series is about an FBI agent or a couple of agents who notice that in spite of the fact that they all have different last names, a lot of the instant and I think the top prize in the American one is like $1 million or $2 million. And a lot of the big cash prize winners are all related. They're in different locations, but they're related to each other through marriage or you know, a second cousin, blah, blah, blah. And it's a case that nearly falls through the cracks because it's all a lot of nebulous detail until one... And it feels like a movie in some ways. Like, there was a point at which I felt like I nearly had to Google, did this really happen? Because it feels like... Yeah. Oh, yeah, it did. It feels like a thing that's almost too cinematic, because there's one, like, new on the block, slightly maverick agent who is peering over somebody's computer and just, I believe he sees a post-it note that says the words, McDonald's Monopoly Fraud. And he's like, hello. And decides that he's going to take this up. And Look, it's 3 episodes in so far. I'm not sure how many episodes there's going to be, but it is a fucking roller coaster ride. And Jack, I don't know how many details you know about the case, but I urge you not to look up any more, because I had never heard of this case, and the twists and the turns and the scope of what this investigation uncovers is fucking mind-blowing at one point.
I vaguely, because I heard a podcast about the story a few years ago, just remember thinking, like, this is absolutely bananas that this was a big thing. And it was like every detail that was getting, it was just another revelation. But I can't remember too much of the real nitty-gritty details.
Good. All you need to know, right? So, like, it very quickly, they're like, right, there are certain avenues we can go down. We don't want to tip off too many people, because at this stage, they don't know. Is it people on the outside of McDonald's counterfeiting these things and winning? Is it somebody in McDonald's feeding winning pieces out of the organization? Or is it something to do with the marketing firm who are in charge, who are partnered with McDonald's on the monopoly thing? They don't know where the leak is coming from, how the scam is being run, so they need to be very delicate about it. And the places it goes, like I said, and the things it uncovers, and the footage they have, genuine archival footage of the winners and the people they interview, because the FBI team go undercover. Because, like, the new agent is like, they talk to one of his supervisors, like, every fucking case this guy is talking about wanting to go undercover. And then we're starting to have meetings about this monopoly thing, and he keeps saying undercover and getting kicked out of meetings for saying it. But eventually they do go undercover, and the footage they get while undercover is amazing. And 3 episodes in, it already has twisted so far away from Monopoly and instant prize winners that I will use 3 words to show you how bananas this is and how you need to watch it. We have gone from Monopoly to strip club church. I will say no more than that.
Okay.
It's pretty much like every so often this happens on HBO, where they just have this documentary series about a thing you may or may not have heard loose details about at some point in the past. The most recent one I can think of before this was The Jinx, which is incredible as well.
Oh, that was a work of art.
It's so good. And this is getting up there already, 3 episodes in. I fucking love it. It's so good. It's so good. You need to check it out. I'm so excited for the 4th episode already.
Two documentaries for you to watch, both with NFL links. The Aaron Hernandez documentary.
Oh, I don't know if Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you guys know much about Aaron Hernandez?
I know loose bits about just as much as you would know from being on Twitter and following people who would follow the sport.
Yeah, so he went from scoring a touchdown in a Super Bowl to being arrested for murder like a year later, to then ultimately committing suicide in jail. And the story of how everything plays out in his life is incredibly fascinating. And yeah, I don't want to spoil too many details of it. Like, if that's all you know, then there's so many facets of interest to him. And the other one is called Vic, which is a story of Michael Vick, who at one point is literally the most exciting athlete on the planet. And then the next point is being busted because a couple of his buddies set up a fucking dogfighting academy, essentially, in his back garden, weirdly enough. And yeah, it's just a story of every detail around what happened with that, and yeah, the center of it. And I was actually broadly shocked by how honest Michael Vick was through all of it, and how genuine, like, he seemed to, like, have at the time no idea that this was going to be an issue, because where he grew up, like, dogfighting was just a thing. And yeah, just a story of how, like, an entire nation just were gradually appalled when they found out the horrendous details of what was going on. So yeah, I'd recommend watching that, because it's very, very interesting, and it gives you a kind of what ESPN 30 for 30 does so well, because it's one of those documentaries, is they give you a background of how the sort of social aspects of certain parts of America are to give you a real grounding into why people end up in the situations they do. Like, they did it so well in the OJ documentary, and I would put the Vic one up there with the OJ documentary as just as good. It's not as juicy of a case as like a murder case, obviously, for people that are into like true crime and stuff, but it is a very interesting story and a very worthwhile use of your time to watch both of those docs.
Theoretically, guys, we're here to talk about video games, but we have a couple of questions came into us this week, hot off the tweet machine.
Hell yeah.
The first of these comes from good friend and former guest of the show, Brian Rose. What are the oldest Pokemon you guys have, and have you put them in Sword and Shield yet?
Mark, do you want to go first, or shall I take this one?
Well, mine's a little bit shorter and a bit of a tragic story, because I had, way back when at the time, I had all of the Gen 3 games, and I had a good 100 hours between both of them, or the ones that I had, and I ended up leaving my Game Boy Advance and my games on a train. Like, I got off and the train went, and that was it. That was my Gen 3 games gone. So, and I had a bunch of Mews on there, legitimately claimed, and all of my teams that I'd built up. So,
sorry, it sounded like you said you had a load of nudes on there.
Mews.
Cool.
All of a sudden, leaving nudes on a memory card like device.
My questions would all be about the technological breakthrough that would allow you to put nudes in a Game Boy Advance.
I mean, I can imagine you would using the Game Boy had a camera, didn't it, that you could take like fucking
I don't know, buddy, it's your
awful pictures on. So I and I had all the Pokemon games afterwards, but I was actually about a year ago, I started kind of cleaning stuff out, and I ended up selling off a lot of my stuff, including my 3DS, I think another DS that I had, and my copies of like Pokemon White, my 3DS that had the remake of Ruby and Sapphire, and my copy of Sun that I had as well. So currently at this moment, like, all I have is Pokemon, my copy of Shield. So now that Home has this central hub that it has its problems with, collecting every single Pokemon there is, and whenever Sword and Shield fully open up the national decks, maybe I'll attempt some sort of grand adventure to fill the thing up. But currently I only have my copy of Pokemon Shield.
For me, yeah, I have like all my copies of Pokemon games, I think, apart from I traded Sun in. But I have like my copy of Pokemon Blue somewhere in the house originally, so technically I have a Mew on that. But like, for any generation, I've never really been, once I beat it, I'm kind of, apart from like, when I originally as a kid played Gen 1 and Gen 2, once I beat a Pokemon game now, I tend to be done with it. Like, I know you guys went out to try and like complete your decks afterwards, but I'm just like, there are so many other games that are on the pile of shame that I don't really have the time. I'll be getting back to Sword once the expansions come out. But other than that, I can't see myself doing a collectathon or getting involved in the trading between generations kind of stuff. Jack, I get the distinct impression that you have a beefier answer to that question than either of us.
I have every single Pokemon game ever commercially released in the UK.
You're a sick boy.
Like, so I'm not the... Of like the main series. I don't have the mystery dungeons and I've got Pokemon Pinball, which is great, and Snap, which is also great. But yeah, so I've got Red, Blue, Yellow, I've got Gold, Silver, Crystal, I've got Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. I could go on. I've got all of them. I've still got my original Game Boy. I've still got a Game Boy Color. I've still got a Game Boy Advance. I've got the Game Boy Advance SP. I've got my DS. I've got my 3DS, and obviously got my Switch. So if I wanted to, obviously you can't trade between 1 and 2 and 3. And I know you can get Pokemon from Generation 3 into Home, but I think you have to have the Virtual Console versions. Like you can get Pokemon from Gold and Silver and Red and Blue from the Virtual Console versions on Switch into Pokemon Home as well. But if I wanted to, I could get any of my Pokemon from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, I suppose, and get them into Pokemon Home. And I might do it at some point just for an experiment, just to see how easy it is to transition. And I have all of my Pokemon is the answer. Every Pokemon that I've ever bred or used in my entire life I still have, and I feel like I'm not sure if I'm proud or ashamed of this fact.
I think the thing with Pokemon Home is that it's a place to build out your decks, but it's not within a game, you know. It's like and who knows what the plan is, the roadmap for Pokemon for the next 10 years, but this central hub is a place where you can just, you know, bundle all your Pokemon into this area and build out your decks. And it's not for the purpose that it's a game. It's just, it's that one central location to put everything. And it's a very appealing prospect. And just, you know, if you're one of those completionist freaks, it's a great thing to have.
Excuse me, what did you call me?
A completionist freak. So, you know, there is part of me that is a bit gutted that I don't have all of my old games to...
Sounds more like jealousy, to be honest with you, mate.
Not
calling me a completionist freak.
No, not at all. Because there is a part of me that would like to have a complete, you know, Pokemon decks. But it's just not happening anytime soon. But hey, if I get streaming at some point in the future, which is a plan, then maybe I can do something with that. But yeah, currently I just have nothing.
Maybe we could stream me getting a Pokemon from Diamond and Pearl all the way up to Pokemon Sword and Shield.
What would you say, like, roughly, how many Pokemon do you think you have of the national decks?
I mean,
like, overall?
Pretty much... I think I might have them all across all the games.
You have truly caught them all.
I think I do, because like all of the Omega, no, not Omega Sapphire. Although you do get a lot of legendaries in Omega Alpha Ruby and Omega Sapphire.
Ultra Star and Ultra Moon had the fucking weird.
I was gonna say Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I would have caught pretty much everything I needed to get all of them, I think. So I've completed many Pokedexes, so I have all the basic bitch Pokemon and the mythical Pokemon.
Did you say?
Yeah, like the basic ass bitch Pokemon. Like I mean,
how dare you call a Caterpie a bitch Pokemon? How dare you?
I mean, it's funny when you said that. My brain immediately went to like Weedle.
Weedle is a bitch Pokemon. I'll give you that.
Stunfisk. No one gives a fuck about that. Like, what would you ever do with that? Love Disc. Fuck off with the Love Disc. Like, what a waste of time. Wishy-washy. That's bullshit. So, like, yeah, all of those Pokemon, fine. But, yeah, I've got, like, so you have, like, the, there's, like, the pseudo-legendary, isn't there? Like, and the traveling legendaries and the mythical Pokemon and the, you know, before they became available that only you could get if you did a giveaway in Japan that only happened for 1 week in the, you know, fucking Kyoto 1 point Pokemon. But now they've been available, so yeah. I think I've got everything, to be honest, which is, I don't know, what that is. That tragic? How tragic
it's
is
an
it?
accomplishment. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Should I put it on my LinkedIn? I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
Definitely.
The friend is me.
I won't say whether better for worse, but employers should know.
Can you imagine that? Like, if there's anything to declare at the end of an interview, I'm like, well, I have a full living dex of Pokemon, so just in case anyone's swayed by this.
Look, it's a moonshot that's going to work on maybe 1 in 50.
Yeah. In case you're looking across Just say to them, like, in case you're looking across the table wondering, is this a man that's caught them all? I just want to assure you that yes, I have.
Imagine that, just pull out a Switch and then start scrolling through Pokemon Home.
I'm just glad when you said caught them all and pulled out that you said Switch afterwards.
Hey. Our other question coming in
STDs.
Coming in from friend of the show, the Barry Lad. What would it take for you to get on board with Stadia?
Folding already.
Pokemon Stadium, because I am very on board.
I saw the question and almost immediately replied with a large bribe.
Yeah, this fucking thing. So I'll guess I'll start. The problem with Google Stadia is that
Is how shit it is.
among many reasons, is that the general kind of concept of it and the general philosophy of it, that, you know, you can stream games, I'm just not fully on board with, and I just don't think that the technology really is there in terms of, I just don't think people, you know, have the types of broadband capacity to stream games by and large, and certainly like America with the types of caps that they have. And the charges that they have with broadband providers, I just don't think it's a feasible option. You know, there's the whole thing about digital games, and you know, do you really own them or not? And I still think it's a very much a grey area. And you know, you buy something on, say, like the original Nintendo Wii, and then 10 years later that gets shut down. And I mean, you can still own that game, but if your Wii, for whatever reason, breaks, that's pretty much it. That's, I guess, a larger indictment of Nintendo and how they manage their accounts. So the biggest issue with Google is just from the get-go, the way that they announced this thing and the communication about what it is and the 85 different versions of it, and the fact that, you know, when it was announced, that, like, in my mind, it was like, okay, cool, you'll pay a subscription service for, say, like, I don't know, 20 quid a month or whatever, and then here's a bunch of games, you can go play them. But the fact that you, depending on, I think, which version, you still have to buy games, and it's like, it's not even a thing that I physically own, and Google doesn't exactly have the track record for staying committed to these kind of brand new ventures they have past, like, 6 months, if they get the feeling that it's not going anywhere. I don't see, you know, I could see Google doing like a Sega did after the Dreamcast, where they have, you know, the things that they know, and they have their software or whatever, and they, you know, go and work with Nintendo or whatever. I could see Google trying to get on board with Microsoft with their xCloud or something, and just like, hey, here's the shit that we know, do you want to get on board with us? But I think it was DOA. I always from the get-go thought this was dead on arrival, and I don't see how that can turn around.
It's just something that's just not on my radar at all. At the point where, like, I have my PS4 and my Switch, and you gotta imagine that most people who would be inclined to get a Stadia, especially at this early entry point, are going to be people who are your hardcores, who are the early adopters. And the only thing that would get me on board with getting like another console or another platform is going to be, show me the special thing. The you know, the industry phrase was always the killer app. Show me the thing that your platform does that nobody else does as well as you, and then we'll talk. And nothing out of Stadia suggests to me that this is a place where I need to be. We've talked about it on the show before, but it very much feels like another one of those Google things that they have a long and storied history of, like, okay, we've decided this is a thing we want, or a sector we want to go into, so we're going to throw a load of money in a hole, see what happens, and then cancel the project 2 years down the line. It very much feels like a Google Buzz, or one of them kind of things.
Remember Google Glass?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck was that? Like, they were trying to make Terminator vision glasses for everyone, and they just faded into obscurity.
Yeah. A more kind of gaming console parallel, right? Because with the way things are going towards streaming, and that seems to be just the way technology is marching now, that we will, as internet speeds and cap situations in North America, as creative solutions are found to those sort of problems over the passage of time, it feels like this is the way gaming will go, where it will lean more heavily on the cloud and digital downloads and ownership of games, rather than the big black box that discs go into at home. And somebody had to go first, even if it was to be the sacrificial lamb, and that other kind of firms within the industry can figure out well, there's the blueprint of what not to do. So what should we do going forward? And in that way, I kind of almost compare the Stadia to the N-Gage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's very N-Gagey in that way, because people realized that there was something more to mobile phones than being a mobile phone. And people, you know, again, within the industry were going, well, mobile gaming has a lot of potential outside of just a Game Boy. So let's have a fucking go and see what happens.
I mean, you could almost sort of compare it to VR as well, in that everyone looked at, or there were people that looked at VR as like the next stage, the next evolution of gaming. And I think it's fair to say at this point, 6 or 7 years later, that VR gaming is just, it's a niche idea that will always be a niche idea. It's a cool niche idea, and when it works really well, but it just, you know, it won't go past that stage. And I think that
the VR thing feels to me like a boutique version of 3D movies.
Yeah, or like a curved TV or whatever the case may be. And I think the big thing as well with the Stadia is that, okay, cool, here's the concept. You can go, you know, you've got a week where you're working out of a hotel, however far away for a conference or whatever, and cool, I can take my phone and this controller and I'll be able to stream Assassin's Creed or whatever. Well, instead of doing that and having to play over whatever dodgy hotel Wi-Fi connection, I can just play Assassin's Creed on my Switch. And, okay, it might not be in 440 or 4K or whatever the case may be with what Stadia does, but hey, it's still a pretty good rendition of that game or port, and does everything that I need. And also, hey, here's all these other games that I own as well. And I just think that, you know, Stadia, Nintendo Switch serves a lot of what Stadia is trying to sell, and it's already there in a package that works. You own the games, and you know the Switch isn't going anywhere anytime soon, where, you know, fucking Google could announce that Stadia's dead next week.
Yeah, I think like it's got a lot of problems that that aren't just ones that the Switch has nerfed, but I do definitely agree with you. I think maybe the killer blow that hobbled it out of the gate was the Switch hitting the market 2 years before this did, and being a tremendous success on a level that I don't think any industry experts or people who observe the markets for video games would have expected. And it's one of those things, I think over time, people are finding that there's what businesses think gaming is going to look like in the future and what people actually want. Like, you remember, Mark, towards the end of the PS3, Xbox 360 generation, people were saying people are fucking done with physical games and stuff like that. But, you know, physical consoles and stuff have outsold their predecessors this generation on all three of the major console platforms, which is incredible. PS4 outsold PS3, Xbox One has now outsold Xbox 360, I think, and the Switch has obviously dicked the Wii U into the dirt several times over.
But here's the thing: there is part of me that likes the idea of streaming, and certainly digital games from an environmental aspect. You know, being able to move away from physical copies, just being able to, you know, remove plastic casing and stuff like that. Now, for me, I would like to see games go back to the old cardboard casing that we had for the Super Nintendo and the N64, but that's just the...
And you know what? Fuck the rainforest. Bring back manuals.
Yeah. Well, I can live without them, but, you know...
Yeah, we can live without the rainforest, Mark. I'm glad you agree with me.
Well, the Brazilians are well on their way at the moment to that at the moment. Yeah. So, yeah, I there is a place for it, but I just don't think the technology is there, and I just don't think the demand is there that maybe Google thought was there. I don't know, maybe they were reading some forum somewhere and thought that this actually would do well. But again, I think
again they've gone too much leaning into people who are kind of speculative, quote unquote, experts, rather than actually reading the temperature of the room. They're kind of going, this is what you would like, rather than what would you like.
And everything about the information and how it was announced, and it was just a fucking mess.
There's been like non-existent marketing like out in the world. Like You know, I'll walk through the London Underground system every day. You know, I see the free papers that, you know, you get given out and everything. And I watch like sport TV mainly. And I have seen like barely fuck all in terms of marketing for this product. It's just like got non-existent presence. Like if you said to most people like who generally didn't have an idea about consoles, they would have heard of an Xbox. They definitely would have heard of a PlayStation, and they almost certainly now would know about Nintendo Switch. But I think if you ask your average person on the street, like, you know, Google has a game console out, they would go, what? And that's a problem too.
What I am curious about as well this year is, now I imagine without question that we'll get a Nintendo a video thing. We'll definitely get a PlayStation State of Play. You know, they don't give a fuck about E3, but we'll definitely still get their video conferences at some point. This really is like the year for Google to swoop in and just be like, hey, you fuckers, like, you know, we have this space, we have this platform to ourselves to just try and fucking market this thing.
But at the same time as well, 2 of the 3 big platform holders are announcing and releasing new consoles this year, so they might get doubly buried if they go, we have our big stage presentation, and then like within hours the news cycle is robbed off them by
I mean that's if Sony or Microsoft even decide to do it around E3, because who the fuck knows what, like, that's a whole nother story, because those 2 companies are playing chicken with each other. Like, they're waiting for the other one to announce something. And
well, I think particularly the one where they all have their stuff ready to go, but particularly the one is Sony are waiting for Xbox to move first on price. Because that is something we've talked about, and you've linked an article here for us, Mark, about like what the fuck is the price of that thing going to be. And I have a feeling there's a lot of wiggle room in there, like they left themselves last generation, where they completely, my god, the 2013 Sony E3 press conference is a thing of fucking beauty in terms of how you fucking smother the competition before it's even off the starters grid. Announcing no DRM and announcing it was a full €100 cheaper for the PlayStation 4 than the Xbox One. And now you have the interesting situation where Sony clearly want to do that again. I have a feeling these consoles are going to come in around $450. That seems to be what a lot of people are saying. And I think if Xbox go $450, PlayStation will go $400 and eat that $50 per unit for a while just to get the audience share. And I think again, if PS4 go first and say $450, Xbox will probably go $400.
See, it's so fascinating because like Sony have the cachet with this generation that you could potentially argue that they could still announce their console is £50 more. It was like the whole thing with the Dreamcast getting out about a year earlier than the PS2, but no one gave a fuck because the PS2 had Metal Gear Solid 2 and everyone was just waiting for that. And, you know, this is just a price point thing, but I wonder if that would make, if say like $50 would make that much of a difference.
I know it was in tandem with the DRM thing, but like look how much the pendulum shifted in terms of where people were playing their games between last generation.
But the thing with Microsoft is they were like, hey, this is an entertainment unit, and no one gave a fuck about that. That was, I think, the big killer for Microsoft.
But you're also thinking about, Mark, like that presentation about the entertainment unit stuff happened at E3, and that is very in the bubble.
Yeah, true.
I think the price point and the DRM thing were way more damaging than the entertainment unit thing. I think the entertainment unit is symptomatic of the whole misfire. I completely agree with you there. But I think you would be surprised at how far, I know €100 is more dramatic, but especially when we're at this kind of phase of homogeneity where like most games most casual people play come out on both consoles. Sony definitely last generation had the edge in first party stuff. And it's I'm not sure with Xbox whether they're actually going to have anything ready to go of their first party library.
Crackdown 4.
Correct, yeah. Because they just shot out a Gears of War last year, which I think was probably a bad idea. They could have just held on to that.
Well, I imagine there'll be a Halo announcement, if nothing else.
Halo Infinite is apparently 2021. That was the last I had heard on it. Now, unless they're going to bring it forward and do a fucking MasterChef collection on it and break the fucking thing.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Fair play to them.
Why wouldn't they do that? That would move insane amounts of units, like, straight away. People would
maybe. I don't know. I don't know if Halo has that cachet anymore. Obviously, it's still a massive thing.
It will definitely move some units. If it's like, buy this one and it has Halo and Sony have nothing day one, then, yeah. I can see that there will be people who are on the fence that might be swayed by, okay, the big cool game that's out on launch day is coming to this one, and it's a shooter.
Yeah, but it's like, Halo was the revolutionary shooter for 2001, but we've already had, like, the next two revolutionary shooters afterwards in COD, and then I guess you could say the Battle Arena PUBG Fortnite thing. So, I don't know, I don't think Halo has the cachet there it once did. What I'm hoping for, what I'd like to see, is that both companies hold off for so long to wait until the other one makes an announcement that neither actually make an announcement, and then we get to about November and then they're like, fuck, we actually need to do something now, and then they both announce it for like 250 quid.
I think both of them dropped the price on June, and I think that's part of the reason that Sony haven't shown anybody what anything on that console looks like, is that even if they get gazumped on price, they will have more stuff to show in their presentation that they'll still control the news cycle, because instead of here's the price of this and here's the price of this, it's like, oh, here's the price of the Xbox, here's the price of the PS4, and this is what the DualShock 5 looks like, and this is what the console looks like, and here are some of the features and stuff like that, so that, like, even if they're €50 more expensive, that hopefully that's only about 5 or 6 news stories down the list on any website that people might encounter.
What I would like is if Microsoft, if they know that this PlayStation 5 will outsell them anyway, is that they'll just go, fuck it, we'll announce it for like $300, and in that way everyone's going to buy a PlayStation 5 anyway, and Sony are going to lose like $150 on each unit, and they'll make a loss that way. That'd be
kind of maddening to me, and I suppose in hindsight they did the exact same thing last generation, where Last of Us comes out in Q2 of the year where the console is coming out in Q4. It's like, you could have waited 6 months and had Last of Us as a fucking launch game. Because that's exactly what happened in 2013. I think it came out in May 2013, and the PlayStation 4 came out in November of the same year. With, like, I think the big killer first party game on PS4 day one was Knack.
Well, I think I heard like there was some sort of thing about a lot of the late game PS4 stuff, or there'll be something where a lot of that will play on the PlayStation 5 anyway.
Yes. The insider stuff on PS4 and the new Xbox, what is it called? What's the new Xbox called again? Fuck. I know it was Project Scarlet, and I'm so used to calling it that.
Has it got a name? I just thought it was Project
It does. They announced the name.
Is it Xbox like, Infinite or?
No, it's like Xbox. Oh fuck. Model X or something like that. It's something. It's a
Xbox Series X.
Yes, that's it. Xbox Series X. That's what it's called. Because
that's a really bad name.
People were like, they're just. They have made shit of the kind of continuity of name.
It's like Alien 3. It's like, what do you do at this point? Alien, yeah.
Yeah, so, what was I saying before that?
It was about the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, let's say backwards compatibility.
Oh, yeah. The word out about both of them is that both of them are going to be fully backwards compatible for the last generation, and then through Game Pass and that shite PlayStation equivalent, PlayStation Now, previous generations will then be backwards compatible through those services, but they will at least be fully backwards compatible for one generation. And that was something that in 2013, when those consoles came out, people were like, this is the last time they can get away with that bullshit, where you have to like sell or throw out all your games at the turn of a generation. It's horseshit. And at least for digital games, it shouldn't be that hard to do. You know what I mean? Especially from what I've heard about Mark Cerny designing this new PS5, is that it's not, he hasn't completely thrown the baby with the bathwater like he did for the system architecture moving for PS3 to PS4. It should be much smoother.
Yeah. Yeah, because the PS3 was just terribly designed, so...
Yeah, they had to throw the whole fucking thing out and start again.
I'll tell you what, our E3 prediction show this year is going to be a fucking wild time.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we'd have to find out who's fucking showing up first.
Well, we know that because the ESA had their whole fucking thing leaked. Unsurprised.
Oh, we know Jeff Keighley isn't showing up.
And we know Jeff Keighley isn't going to be there, yeah, so...
So yeah, I suppose that's kind
no.
of
Actually, is it a case of is anyone going to show up, or will any journalist actually want to go there and review, or actually report anything? If no reporters are there,
I'll go.
If no reporters are there to report on it, did it ever really happen?
Can I go?
Yeah, well, if you want to get doxed,
yeah, spend 165 quid on the Gamer Pass.
Before we hit the road.
No. I mean, I'm a journalist of this podcast. I want to go.
Indeed. Yeah. See, do you know what, Jack? It would be actually interesting to see. I know you won't go over, but try and get credential for it and see what happens.
I'm going. If I get a credential, I'm there. I'll report to you live.
I would actually really enjoy it if it's an epic failure, if you could document week by week your process of getting credited for E3.
Actually, you know what? How do you get credited for E3?
Well, you know what, Jack? Report back to us next week when you find out. That's
I'm going to E3, and I don't even care. When is E3?
June, July.
June. Yeah,
June.
that's
ages. I thought it was going to be like I'd have
Yeah, it's next week, mate. Hurry up.
I just got to book tickets. Where is it? Anaheim or somewhere?
No, it's LA, isn't it?
LA Convention Center.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, so direct flight to LA, no problem, and get credential.
I tell you what, Mark, the two of us, after 5 years in this program, will be fucking sickened to the back teeth.
Not really. I have never had any interest in going to E3. Fuck that place.
If the fucking LA. Dan Reichert of this podcast, Jack Lazel, just to stumble into press passes for E3, first time of asking.
Do you know what? I've got to try now, really, haven't I? I mean,
yeah. I think it'll be interesting even to be able to document the process on the show. That'd be fun. But look, before we hit the road here on the show, I have a couple of bits to recommend, both to you guys and to the wider audience. And both of them are podcasts. And the first one that I started listening to last week is called The Other Latif. And it's from... I had linked you an episode of a really kind of famous podcast documentary series recently, Mark, called Radiolab. And it was when it was in the build-up to you voting in your first Irish general election a couple of weeks ago, which has panned out beautifully. The less said, the better. But there was an episode about proportional representation and different forms of voting in which Ireland was featured. It's a long-running kind of... we take a weird nebulous topic every couple of weeks and drill down deep into it and see what kind of material we get from it sort of podcast. One of the people who works on Radiolab, a guy called Latif Nasser, has started this new side series that is available through the Radiolab podcast feed called The Other Latif, and that was based on his curiosity about there's some website where you're able to put in your name and it will tell you how many other people in the world share that name. And he
how many tens of thousands of Mark Robinsons are there, by the way? Oh my God.
How many Dave Ryans, my friend?
What do you reckon more, Dave Ryan or Mark Robinson?
There is a Dave Ryan who hosts a fairly popular breakfast radio show in the States. So I am it is tough to Google me sometimes.
I'm pretty sure there's a Division 2 football player with my name. That's all I remember.
Yeah. Do you know how motherfucking easy it is to Google me? If you Google me, I will be there. My Twitter is probably.
Well, that's because you are the infamous Jack Lazel.
Yeah.
Known also, E3 reporter.
I'll put it this way: I wasn't even the only Dave Ryan in my school, so it's a common one. But no, so this guy he looked it up and it said there is one or less people with that name, and he was really intrigued by this answer. And then he went and found out that the only other Latif Nasser that he could find in North America was a prisoner in Guantanamo Bay.
Wow.
And the documentary unfolds from there, and he travels over, in episode 2, he even travels over to Morocco to meet Latif Nasser's family. He follows what happened with Latif Nasser, why he's there, his case, things like that. it's one of those starts off with a kernel of interesting information and just unfolds into something much bigger and more interesting than you would have thought on the surface of it. Kind of reminds me of like an S-Town or something like that. Really good little podcast series that I think is 3 episodes deep right now, unless I've missed one. The other one is 2 episodes of the same podcast, a podcast I tweet about every now and then called 99% Invisible, which is one of my favorite podcasts. It's like being in a lava lamp. It is so relaxing and chill. It's Roman Mars's bi-weekly podcast, I think. All about the world of design and architecture and interesting things about the way society is built and constructed. And he has 2 episodes recently that I think both of which will be interesting, in particular to one Jack Lazel. The first episode is called Missing the Bus, and it's all about how delicately balanced public transportation is, that slight changes in investment in the infrastructure of public transport can have massive butterfly effect on an economy.
Of course,
about how like it's like for every X amount of million you take away from public transport, you actually move the needle on unemployment rises by a proportionate amount. Things like that. And about how like one of the best solutions for underemployment is to heavily invest, not in the unemployed necessarily, but in public transport. It's a really fascinating look at kind of economic problems from an avenue you wouldn't have thought of as being a solution to them. And then the other one, which is a much lighter one, an episode called "Whomst Among Us Let the Dogs Out." And
is it a documentary about the Baha Men, please?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I'm so happy about that.
It's a documentary about who let the dogs out, about how it has become such a generational earworm of a song, and how it has origins that you might not expect. And that's I'll bury the lead on that one.
It was originally Who Let the Cats Out, but they changed it. Do you know what's funny? You know, you were saying about how if you don't invest in public transport, just an interesting tag up on that. There's a really weird sensation in the UK called parliamentary rail services, right? Look this up. And it is the idea that it is actually less efficient to close down a train station that, like, say, less than a couple of hundred people use a year. Like, imagine, like, so there's 365 days in a year. So we're talking railways or like stations that have less than a passenger a day, right? It's actually less efficient to close them down than it is to keep them open. Because to close down a station in this country, you have to jump through about 10 different layers of things, including having a The Simpsons style town meeting where people turn up to air their grievances. So just out of interest, I don't know if anyone anywhere has done like a good explanation on how parliamentary railways work, but I mean, fuck me. Like,
if there's a podcast that has, it's 99% Invisible, I can tell you that.
Okay, yeah, it's just bizarre. Yeah,
Jack, so, I don't know if I've sent you the video of this before, but it is for me it's the big selling point, it's the thing that got me into the show, and it's Roman Mars doing a TED talk about flags.
Oh, I love flags.
Dude, the study of flags, vexillology, by the way.
I knew that. I knew that. You didn't need to tell me that. I am a big fan of vexillology.
I've already sent you a couple of things, a couple of links for stuff to watch today, and I'm going to send you this, and I am insisting that you watch this as soon as humanly possible. It's only like 15 minutes, and it's the most chill and relaxing, and as soon as you hear this man's voice, you'll understand why you want to listen to a podcast. It's the most silky radio voice, and he talks about the principles of flag design.
Okay, yep. That is definitely going to listen to then. I mean, I love Keith Byrne almost as much as I love flags. Sorry, Keith.
Keith Byrne is the modern-day Nintendo seal of approval, so I'm on board.
Yeah, that little gold seal in the top right-hand corner. Can we put a gold seal on Keith Byrne so we can identify him as societally approved? Not at all creepy.
I think Dave has crashed again.
Ah, sweet mother of God.
Well, you know what? While Dave is off somewhere in the internet, I will take the decision and I'll close the show off here on behalf of Dave Ryan.
By God, it's a heel turn. You crashed Dave, didn't you? You were the reason Dave isn't here.
I wanted to be the last thing heard this week.
You've wanted to close the show for years, and now you're getting a goddamn opportunity at it.
I've closed this fucking show many a time, you son bitch.
I know, it's just funny to say.
God damn. Keep listening to all of our good content. We had a wrap up last week that was a January roundup that I very much enjoyed doing. As mentioned on the last Link to the Cast, we are on Instagram as well, so you can follow us on there, Link to the Cast. As always, we are on every podcasting platform of choice, so please continue to listen. Please, I just want to say thank you to Brian and Barry for sending their questions. This is a thing we'd like to start doing every week if possible, so we'll put a tweet out on the day that we're going to record, so if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in. We have a couple of ideas coming up for a few different types of shows that we want to do, so watch this space because I think they're going to be pretty good. But in the meantime, I am Mark, he was Dave Ryan, God bless his soul, and that's Jack over there. Say goodbye, Jack.
Hello. I'm waving.
And we will see you again next time.